everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course that makes this the 51st episode of the Circles and Squares PlayStation Podcast. And boy, do we have a big one here today, Kate, because as you can tell, video listeners, maybe I'll let Kate take it away with what she's wearing and why it matters towards this episode today.
Well, let me tell you, I took an extremely small gamble on pre-ordering an Elden Ring hoodie before the game came out in the hopes that it wouldn't be shit. And let me tell you, this game is the furthest thing from being shit. It's the shit, in fact. Uh, we are all excited about Elden Ring today. So yeah, this is my Kickstarter, my Vaddy Video hoodie that he put out before Elden Ring, I think with from Soft, like kind of as a partnership sort of thing, because he's obviously one of the big guys in the community, and everyone should go check him out and find out what the hell's going on with limb lore over in Elden Ring. But yeah, so I picked this up. It's actually super cool. He did like the first, like, I don't know, 100 people, or there was like a special one for the first few people that picked it up. So I actually have a slightly cooler version than anyone else who bought it later.
Damn.
And you can maybe see in the back, I don't know how well this will show up.
It's cool, honestly. I don't know who that character is, but I know you said it was from a trailer or something, right? Like one of the...
She is in one of the trailers, and I'm assuming she's gonna be some late game content, so maybe we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll probably get my ass kicked by her a few hundred times. And...
Oh, absolutely.
Well, look at that. Just before we get into the Elden Ring stuff, though, I just want to lay out a bit of housekeeping. We have a few things to talk about. So, we went through and for some reason in 2022 thought it was a good idea to rank all the characters from Lost. And so I really want to urge everyone, if you've ever watched Lost, if you like that show, let us talk you through who are the best and worst characters on that show, because we put on an episode of the Circles and Squares extra podcast going all over pretty much every cast member. Like that tier list was extensive, yeah. Right? It was an extensive tier list.
It was.
So it took us a while, but we had a great time. Please go check that one out if you're so inclined. We also have a very big episode coming up next time on this show. For our 52nd episode, it's roughly the 1-year anniversary of when we went and did our top 25 games of all time episode, one of my personal favorites. And for those listeners that are new or weren't around back when we did that, basically, Kate and I both make a top 25 list of our personal top 25 games of all time. In itself, that's a very difficult task, let me tell you. And especially now, we've played so much more throughout the last year, and opinions change, So we put those together, and then we come on this show, and we amalgamate those lists together. There is argument and discussion on all these games, and, where do they slot in? Which games are on both of our lists? Which one are we very personally excited about, but the other person hasn't played? Stuff like that. And so it's a great time, and we're very excited to record that one for next time, and we hope you are excited to listen when that comes out. As far as this show goes, we're going to obviously talk about the games we've been playing at the start, which I'm going to start off with Persona 5 Strikers, because I did beat that and I want to get it in before we just get run over by the Elden Ring train and talk about that for the entire rest of the episode. Until we get to the end, and we'll close it out with a listener mail discussion as we do. So I think that's everything we have to go over, Kate, and let me just get into Persona 5 Strikers then, get this out of the way before we move on. So we talked about this a couple episodes ago, and this is the Dynasty Warrior style Persona game. I stuck it through because I'm obviously huge into the franchise, love the story, and the story really was great here. I put the game just on easy. I just wanted to go through. I mean, the battling is so... I mean, I think we said last time too, it's very button mashy, right? Like you're kind of just hitting those elemental spells and mashing through. So he was like, you know what? What's a few hundred less presses on my square button? I'm just going to slam this down, go through the story. And it was a great time. Like I think last time I even brought up Zenkichi as one of my more favorite side characters in like the franchise in general, actually. He was an outstanding character, and I wish we'd got to see him more sort of in the main game as well.
And he's the detective. Is he in the main game? I don't.
He's not. He's
remember
not.
him. Okay.
No. He's a new character. So. Yeah, he's the detective guy as well. So.
Yeah, he's
cool. Yeah, he's cool because he's like his whole thing is like the police want to basically gather intel on the Phantom Thieves and use them to like catch these crimes that are going on, and he's supposed to like flip on them eventually, but then he he grows to be a partner with them and gets to know them and the whole thing that goes on there. So it's very cool stuff. And what I will say is one of my favorite things, and I know it's for anyone that's played Mass Effect 2, this is a really big thing, is the final battle. This game does something very similar where you have to like divide your squad up into different teams and like, okay, so we're going to be on the ground fighting this enemy, and I'm going to keep these two characters with me. And then, so we've got 2 other missions to go off and do. Like, you got to go kill these pillars, and who's going to lead the team over here? Is it going to be like Morgana and Ryuji over here, and like Makoto over there with whoever's taking with her? And something about like dividing the team up and like, okay, who would be like my second in command to go like lead this team? And how do these characters fit together? Like, that's the kind of thing, for some reason, it just really gets me going in games like that have these kind of ensemble casts. And I really wish that there was more of it, because those type of
Yeah.
missions are just so cool.
They are really cool, and I think something like Persona, like, it's a good comparison to Mass Effect because they lend themselves to that sort of gameplay in the same way, in the sense of, like, you really get to know the characters in your squad, and there's more to it than just, like, that person's my healer or that person's, like, magic DPS. Like, they do have those mechanical distinctions, but you get to know them so well as characters with so much more depth that, like, you would genuinely also take into consideration, like, well, what kind of charisma do those 2 characters have? Like, is that character a little bit more level-headed and that character's a little bit more reckless, so maybe they need to balance each other out, or maybe you do need the character that's a little bit more, like, willing to take risks. And so, like, you take that into consideration in addition to more of, like, mechanical type things, and
Right.
I don't know how well the game takes advantage of that, but if it does, that's at least, like, a really cool experience for the player.
Yeah, I mean, in Mass Effect, definitely that stuff I think makes a big difference.
Mhm.
In this game, I think it is more just like, what characters do you sort of want to put together for the task
Yeah.
you're put up to, and then I think the one thing it affects is like the dialogue, right? Because they're going to be talking to
Yeah.
each other, so kind of what sort of dynamic do you want? Like Ryuji Morgana is always such a great combination, right? Because they're like
Yeah,
arguing, and
they bicker so much,
it's so much
yeah.
fun to see those 2 together. But yeah, it was a good game. It was I wouldn't say it's really brought me around on this style. Like, I wouldn't go seeking this, but I think what I would
Mhm.
say is I don't think I'm quite as put off by this style of game as I thought I was going to be. And if it was another franchise sort of like Persona that I'm already invested in, and I like it enough, especially if it's like this one, which is a direct sequel to,
Mhm.
to the main game, I think I would be inclined to, pick one of these up again, but it would have to be specifically like for a franchise that I'm already connected to and want more of. So, but that's good, right? I mean, I think this
Mhm.
is an example of like my horizons have been expanded. Um,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have
and
played this.
that's awesome. That's quintessentially what we wanna do with the PS Plus games, right? Is we play
Mhm.
something we wouldn't normally play otherwise, and, not always do they land, but every now and again, you genuinely do go through and finish a game, and that's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah. So that's Persona 5 Strikers.
Okay. Well, I've got just one question
Yeah.
for you before we go, because like you said, I am a big Persona 5 fan, but not really I didn't really get gripped so much by this one. But I'm curious in the story, do you think it's worth it? Like, should I go through and just watch the cutscenes all on YouTube and
Oh,
experience the
definitely.
story? Like, it
Definitely you
is
should. Yeah.
relevant and impactful?
Definitely it is. Yeah. I mean, it is of a similar quality to the base game.
Hmm.
The what you get is good. I think the only reason it doesn't really hold up in terms of story wise to the original is just because of the duration of time you get to spend with the characters, and the
Mhm.
development you get, and just like, I mean, it's a 150-hour like RPG. You're gonna go through so much
Mhm.
more than you are. Like, I beat this in 30 hours, and a lot of it's
Yeah.
spent in the dungeons, right? So but I definitely think the cutscenes are worth going through, because um Persona 5, like in the regular game, you spend a lot of time meeting the characters and getting to know them from the beginning, whereas in this you kind of hit the ground running. You're like, okay, we're a squad, like,
Mhm.
these guys, and so you kind of miss that backstory part, and you get right into the meat of like the dynamics of the group. And so I think it's cool for people that have played, and I would definitely recommend going back, watching those for sure. But yeah, you'll get something out of it.
Okay. Deal.
Um,
I'll make that compromise.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. We'll talk about it maybe offline, maybe not on the show. But you can write into circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com if you have any thoughts on the Persona 5 Strikers story. Kate, let's stop stalling here and get to the big topic at hand. It is Elden Ring time, and I what's funny is usually, like, I think we both prepare some notes and kind of have an idea of what we're going to talk about, and things we don't want to miss. But for this game, like, I've just been absorbed in it, right? It's pretty much all I've played since it's come out the last little bit. Aside from some little Sonic Team racing breaks, because I won't get into it right now. It just was like the first thing on PS Plus. I was like, this seems happy and fun, and I just died 7 times in Elden Ring, and I need to So,
Gotta take
so I've
a
been palate
lap to
cleansing a
clear
little
my
bit.
mind.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I think we're just gonna let this one flow and see where it goes. But I want to give you the floor first because you are the Elden Ring expert. You are the person that's been waiting for so long, and I just want to hear before we get really into the depths and in the weeds and in all the the nitty gritty. I just want to hear your top level elevator pitch. Like, where is this game for you? What are you thinking of it overall? And I know you were so excited for it pre-release, and from what you've played so far, obviously having not finished it, do you think it is meeting your very high expectations that you had to start?
Okay. Easy answer. TLDR, yes, absolutely. I'm 34 hours into the game according to Steam. That might be disingenuous. Some of that's like, games on while I'm doing other stuff. And some of that's just kind of dicking around with friends. We're doing some PvP. So I'd say about 30 hours of actual good old fashioned playing. The What's funny about this game is the like meme pitch that came out for it is, oh, it's just big Dark Souls.
Hmm.
And people say it dismissively, like, "Oh, it's big Dark Souls." But guys, it's big Dark Souls, like, that's what we want. Um, no, it's really cool for me. I think I know a lot of people are getting into it. This is their first FromSoft game because it's just so big right now, like, everybody's talking about it, everybody's playing it, like, you can't go 2 minutes without being in any kind of gaming-related online space without hearing something about
Right.
Elden
It
Ring.
truly is one of those moments, almost like a Pokemon Go moment. It feels almost like
Yeah.
where it's really broken that conversation, and like people who wouldn't usually even be part of that community are engaging with it.
Yeah, which is very interesting because FromSoft games are niche games. Like this this is easily one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life, and I would bet that like it's going to be tough for things to top this. But I wouldn't recommend this to everybody because it's still a FromSoft game. It's still difficult and prickly, and if you're not into the kind of gameplay loop of like wanting to overcome challenges and learning through death and kind of having a little bit of like, that quintessential experience, I don't think this is gonna change your mind.
Hmm.
But what this game does do is it kind of switches up the formula a little bit, and it's very interesting because I typically would say I'm not an open world person. I think we talked about this last
Yeah,
episode,
I think
actually.
we both kind of agreed that neither of us really gravitate towards open world, but there are certain
Mhm.
things that can maybe pull each of us into one, depending how it's done, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I kinda went into I mean, I trusted, Miyazaki and the FromSoft team to deliver something really, of a quality product, so I wasn't worried about Elden Ring, but I wasn't sure where it was gonna sit on my list of, like, I guess, rankings for them, because I love the traditional FromSoft level design. That is my perfect kind of map. They're still very open, they're still all about exploration and uncovering secrets and finding things, in hidden optional areas, and they want you to spend hours just scouring the map. But it is confined, and it is sort of intended to go through in a certain direction and in a certain way. And there's definitely times where you get to break that mold and kind of you can go three different places instead of just one right now. But they're not open world, they're relatively contained. And of course, they're known for that amazing level design where they're looping in on themselves and everything tangibly makes sense in relation to other places in the world. And like, you'll go up a massive ladder, the FromSoft ladder, of course, or you'll go down to a cave and pop up somewhere, and it's like, oh shit, like I know where I am, and you actually get to orient yourself. And you're like, you know what? I think if I go south, I'll end up like
Hmm.
X, and
Hmm.
that actually does happen. And I feel like I genuinely know some of those areas better than I know, like, especially since moving. I know
Sure, yeah.
areas in FromSoft games better than I know my own
I
neighborhood,
can
like
definitely relate to that right
100%.
now. I can certainly relate.
So, coming to Elden Ring, I'm like, "Well, how is that gonna translate to an open world?" And I think they've done a phenomenal job. Um, so basically, the open world is fucking huge, by the way. It's
Oh my god.
overwhelmingly large.
And it's bigger than you expect when you first
Oh
look
my
at that
god.
map. It
Oh,
it
it is.
begins to kind of stretch out and become different
Yeah.
sizes and I mean other things too that
Yeah.
I won't maybe
Yeah,
mention here.
you think it's big, and then you get yeeted to the Shadow Realm, and look at where you are on the map now, and you go, "Oh my god." Um, but yeah, so the open world is massive. You can basically explore as you will. Nothing gates you aside from, like, walking to an area and getting your ass absolutely handed to you and thinking, "Maybe I should come back later." Um, and then you do go into they're called dungeons in this game, which are the more quintessential FromSoft level design. Something like Stormveil Castle is one of the early ones, and I still think Stormveil has been my favorite part of the game so far. I
Hmm,
just
hmm.
like the way that they design those levels. But the open world is a big plus for me, and I
I
didn't
agree.
necessarily
I
expect
agree.
that.
I want to jump in on that too, and I just want to maybe before we get too far down to it, I just want to say this. So we're from where I'm at.
Mhm,
Obviously coming from a very different place than you. I'm 24 hours in. I just was playing last night, so I
okay.
played about 10 less than you.
Mhm.
Which is, I mean, I feel like I played a lot, so you must have been really going hard because I've been playing every day and doing this. People will know I'm not like a huge Souls person. I love Bloodborne.
Mhm.
I bounced off of Sekiro, even though I deeply respected it for what it's doing. It just wasn't for me. And so coming into this,
Mhm.
I was like, I got to play something for the podcast, right? It's going to be Horizon or it's going to be
Mhm.
Elden Ring. And then for some reason, I was just, I had you and a couple other friends, and you're, you should play it, you should play it.
Elden
And I was like,
Ring.
fuck, you know what? Like, I know you're
We're
gonna
all
be
doing
like,
this.
I know you're gonna be talking about this on the podcast so much that
Yep.
I just felt like, for content's sake and for this specifically, it was kind of the tipping point of like, I should just pick this up. So I gotta have an opinion on this, right? And I'm glad I did. I'm having a good time, and um, I think it's very important to say for our discussion that like I'm not
Mhm.
I'm on the edge of like I enjoyed Bloodborne despite it being designed like the
Yeah.
Dark Souls stuff. Like it usually isn't for me. And so I really want to say that because I would like to encourage people who are not also part of the Souls to give this a go. Um, from like my perspective too, because I think your perspective is a lot like, hey, we're the Souls fans and this is made for us and this is what we wanted, and that's great because that's a lot of people. But for me,
Mhm.
it's like, hey, I was skeptical about this, and this is the kind of thing
Mhm.
that I think could be way more, you know, accessible for other people. But I still think it's really worth trying, and I think that from
Yeah.
my perspective, it's great too. And the reason that comes to my mind is because you mentioned the open world, and that is to me, and I don't know if I've said it to you before. I've talked to a few different people about the game, but the open world is the reason I think this is the one where people like me can come in and have a good time. And it's because of what you said. You're never really stuck in the same way in this game. Like sure, you can get stuck. I've been stuck several times on like X encounter and whatever place I'm at. But the difference in this one is you can just go somewhere else, and
Mhm.
you're going to inevitably run into a place where you do feel like you can use the skills you've gained so far to take out the enemies there. Like you if you explore enough, I think you will find those places. And even if you don't, there's like little, menial enemies in the field, and you can kill them and maybe level up a few times and do it. And it's
Mhm.
not like it's easy, but it's
It's
more
more
approachable because
accessible.
you
It's
can
approachable.
look around and kind of find an easier path. Like I was getting stuck over on one area, and I just kind of went south
Yeah.
the other day, like you would recommended, and it
Yep.
was like the easiest area ever. I kind of just walked through, and I was way over leveled, of course, and all this stuff. But I
Mhm.
just think that the freedom that it gives you is very much like it's a boost to people who are just turned off by the idea of being stuck outside a boss door and having nothing to do aside from fight him 50 times and get killed and become upset. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree, and I think that's a really big plus for this game, and when I say, like, it's niche, if you don't like Souls, it's not for you, I don't mean to be, like, gatekeepy. I don't like
Hmm,
when
hmm.
people are like that, like, "Oh, only we can beat Elden Ring because 'cause we're so fucking good." Like, not at all in that vein, I just mean, like, if you actively dislike that style of game, like, it's easy to get caught up in the
Sure.
hype, and so,
Yeah.
like,
It's still a
don't have
Souls game, right?
expectations that
Yeah.
this game isn't a Souls game, but I agree, I think it's really approachable. It actually has a tutorial, which, like, teaches you
Oh, it's a shit tutorial,
maybe
but
40% of the things you need to know, but hey, that's better than than
yeah.
what they've done in the
Yeah.
past. But yeah, the open world is great for that because yeah, you're not stuck up against a boss, come back, go do other things, come back later. I think this is a good it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I think it's a good place for new players to jump in for that reason.
Hmm.
But I think you still need to kind of take it, approach it as the game sort of wants you to approach it in a way. And not that like there's so many different play styles and you can have a lot of flexibility, but I've seen a lot of people online and, like, kind of review bombing this game and, like, "Oh, like, why do you lose all your souls when you," or I guess like,
Your
runes when
runes.
you die, and,
Yeah.
like, like, "Why is there no map quest markers?" And, like, if you wanna play, like, Assassin's Creed, play Assassin's Creed,
Right,
right?
right,
If you
right.
wanna try out a Souls game, and this is a really good one to jump into, then try it out, and, like, the community is genuinely one of the nicest communities I've ever been a part of, and, like, go on Reddit, like, look up a question, ask questions, like, people are so incredibly happy to, like, get new people in and, like, initiate you and tell you how excited you should be when you see a crab, like, that is all we want.
I think
Like
it's interesting though because I think like from as an outsider's perspective, just like maybe this is
Mhm,
away from stepping away from Elden Ring for a second, but it's
mhm,
like to me as someone that is, it's interesting to hear you say that because as someone that I wouldn't identify as being part of like that community, I think that people who aren't find it very intimidating and they do find it gatekeepy and off-putting. And
hmm,
so I think it's a big ask for people to like, hey, I'm just gonna go post on the subreddit because I'm really out of my
yeah.
element and I don't
That's
understand like
true.
what this game wants from me. But at the same time, I mean, you're probably you're not wrong. Like I'm sure the people there are friendly, but I think it's just like this
Yeah.
game has a lot of work to do, and I think the Souls games have a lot of work to do in changing the perception of being very elitist, I think, among like
Mm,
non-players. And I think this game is actually really going to help that because if you've seen like the numbers, we talked about this on our news show a little bit, and there's like, or maybe I talked about, maybe this is when I was on Plastic Hearts, but there's like the numbers are just so outrageously high for like number of people buying and playing this game. It's like,
mhm,
you know, the the player base and all the different types of people playing this must have expanded, right? Like it's no longer just the hardcore people playing this. There are people from all different kinds who are jumping in. And I think that's awesome, and I really hope that that makes that community just that much more expanded and like it does become the lore focused
mhm.
people are really over here and these are the people who are really into PvP, and then here's the people who are kind of helping the new people, and I would love to see it kind of grow like that because there is so much room for different types of playstyles like you said in this game as well.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's just having an open mind, I guess, is the best
Mhm.
thing to
Mhm.
do. Like, you're gonna die a lot, like, yeah, okay, you're right. Like, if I'm picking up a game, the last thing I wanna know how to play the game. I think the game should teach you what you need to know, and you shouldn't have to look
Yeah,
things
yeah.
up. And I will say that about a lot of things. Art, like, a lot of JRPGs are shit for that. These
It's
games
so
are
true.
bad for that. Like, you shouldn't have to Google how a mechanic works, to, like, be able to know how to do it. But, I mean, that's just the unfortunate
Mhm, mhm.
reality. It's one of the only downsides. I think, like, some people make the excuse of, like, "Oh, well, it's from software, like, you're supposed to be a mystery and figure stuff out." Like, yeah, I agree on that for, like, 90% of stuff in the game. I wanna go in blind and figure out what the hell is going on, but I don't need to go in blind to, like, need to know how I'm supposed to level my character from
Exactly,
the
yeah,
start,
yeah.
like,
Or like
that's
I don't need to be
denial.
blind. One of the things that this game does a terrible job of teaching you is like what are the status effects and how do they work? And like these buffs that you have, like you have no idea what these things
How
do to you.
how long did you walk around after getting that hug? Like, that negative
I
debuff?
I didn't know there is a negative debuff on the hug. I've been hugged the whole time.
Oh, you fool.
See, this is the thing. Like, that's cool to me though.
Yeah,
The hug thing is cool, right? Like, for
that
those
is
that don't know,
cool, I
there's an
like that.
NPC and she'll hug you, and I guess I got something from it, but I guess it's bad for you at the same time. And like,
Well
I'm fine with that not being explained to me
Yeah.
because it's like that's the kind of thing where it's like you're making a choice similar to like a visual novel game like Heavy Rain. You'd be like, well, am I going to go in this door or am I not? And you don't know what the consequence of that's going to be. And I think that's a good level of crypticism,
Yeah,
if that's a word, because it it forces you to make a choice without knowing what the result is going to be.
yeah,
And I really like that. And that's like this hug is like that at the same time in
yeah.
Elden Ring. But then the criticism I think that this game really struggles from is the thing of like, why can't you show me a definition of like what is bleed damage? How exactly does this work? I've
Mhm.
got under my stamina bar, I've got like 7 different gray boxes with a little icon in them showing me different buffs that I've got or debuffs. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of those mean at all. Like it's like a level of mysticism that I think is unnecessary.
Mhm.
And like it just makes me not want to engage with buffing myself at all because I'm like I don't really understand how it works. Whereas and I think that's shutting me off from a lot of stuff that could make the game even cooler if I just had that little bit more explanation.
And I think that is one of the things about the games that I think will never change,
Hmm.
but will be difficult for new players, and, like, it's kind of the weird thing about Elden Ring is it's the double-edged sword of it is the best one to get into, but
Hmm.
also walking around Elden Ring after being very familiar with the rest of the games is such an interesting experience because they're not, they're not direct sequels, right? Like, Dark Souls 3 is a direct sequel to Dark Souls. That's it. Like, Bloodborne is its own thing, Sekiro is its own thing, Demon Souls is its own thing. It's not Dark Souls, it's Demon Souls, they're different. And Elden Ring's different, right? They're their own entities, but I see them like an anthology of games because every single one that comes after, it's so clear where the what they've learned from the previous game and how it's been adapted into the new one, and there's, like, a very, central motif as well in terms of not just how they tell a story, but also just, concepts that come up in every game, and they're kind of explored in slightly different ways, and so I really see them as, like, they're very connected in that way, and Elden Ring is just, like, the absolute celebration of all the other games, like,
Right.
everywhere I go, I feel like a tour guide. I'm like, "Oh, if you look to your left, there's Demon Souls, and if you look to
Right.
your right, that's Dark Souls 3." And like, "Uh-oh, we accidentally got yeeted into Bloodborne." Like,
Yeah.
whoopsies.
And I think that's one of my favorite things about hearing people, especially like series veterans like you and our good friend Mr. Del
Mhm,
Monster talking about this, is like you both said the same thing to me individually, and I'm sure you probably didn't talk too much about it, is like, you can really see the DNA of all the different games in this,
mhm,
and it's in terms of like the story and the enemies and the places and the design philosophy and all these different things, and I think that's so cool, and that's something that I wish I had the context for, because as much as I'm
mhm,
enjoying this game, and I know I've had a few negative things to say about it off the start, and I think a lot of the reasons I say those negatives is because I like the game so much. I just want it to be that little bit more, to be like even more perfect, and then I'll feel like
mhm,
exactly like that. But I love the way that this people who are really into these games are getting so much out of it like that. Like
mhm,
that to me is the mark of a really like, it's clear they're not just putting this game out for sales figures, right? Like they're digging so deep into that lore and like really taking it seriously of like building the world and their brand and what they're trying to do with like the From games.
mhm, absolutely, and I this is, like, the only studio that I pre-order from because I have so much faith and so much trust, and I know that they make the kind of games that I really appreciate, like, these games hit for me on every single level. I love the gameplay, the combat feels incredible. It's Dark Souls 3, but it's definitely, taken a little bit from Sekiro. I guess you got the jump from Sekiro, but
I
it's
love
it's
having the jump,
definitely
by the way. I
jump is so
love it.
nice. But it definitely feels the most Dark Souls 3 to me. But so obviously it's super smooth, it's amazing. The hitboxes are on point in this game. They are incredibly impressive to the point where like if you like there's like the lay down emote, which has always been kind of a joke, but like if you lay down, swings will go over your head because
Really
oh yeah, absolutely.
interesting.
They'll go over your head. You can jump things that are low to the ground. Like it is very, very clean and well done. So gameplay is phenomenal. So many good boss fights so far in this game. Um, but like the lore and the world building is like that to me. I spend so much of my time just like pulling out my binocular and looking at
I
statues
don't even have a
closer.
binocular.
Oh, that's the first thing I bought. You get to the vendor spoilers, though, you get to the first vendor and they're like, "Please buy this crafting equipment because crafting's in the game now." I'm like, "I bought the binocular so I
Hey,
could look at things," and, like, I'll kill an enemy and I'll, like, use my binocular to, like, get a little closer up look at what he looks like, and then I'm looking at statues and just I spend a lot of time just, like, looking environmental clues and reading things, and I understand that's not for everybody,
yeah,
because,
that
like,
definitely is not how
they're
I'm playing, I'll tell you what.
they're
My
difficult.
experience is more like, how am I gonna stay alive today?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a survival game. But I spend a lot of time engaging with the world building, in these games 'cause I just think they're so fascinating how intentional they feel. And so this one's a little bit trickier for that, I think, because the open world, right? It's tougher to,
Mhm.
assume how the player like, when the player is gonna interact or meet certain NPCs or get to different areas, and so
Yep.
that really changes the flow of the game. And I think I don't know, it's tough to tell, like, I love the open world. I think I'll always prefer the older games in terms of their approach. But
Hmm.
that being
Hmm.
said, I think the open world is amazing for this. I love just stumbling into things. I've lost 100% of the time in the best way possible. I've gone through every area, like, every map section, like, multiple times, and every time you run through it, I'm like, "Oh, shit, like, I didn't notice this the first time," or like, "Oh
Yeah,
my
right.
god, like, look over here," and, it's nighttime, so now things are different, and it's just so jam-packed with things, and I think that's honestly what I'm most impressed with because that's different for them, right? Like, that is where they took their biggest departure and were really ambitious, and this open world is it's blowing my mind because typically, what I don't like about open world games is I feel like they're often wasted spaces. So
Hmm.
I feel like in and not every single game, and some games are good for various reasons. Like I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is an amazing example of an
Yeah,
open
right.
world.
Yeah, we both loved
Um,
Tsushima a couple of years
we both
ago.
love Tsushima, but I think they both have reasons for being open world that are not just we wanted to make an open world game, right?
Right,
Like
not just
Red
we've invented 75 side quests and we need a map
Yeah,
big enough to give you locations for them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, like, in Red Dead, like, you run around and you do some hunting on your way back to camp, and there's a lot of mundane stuff happening in Red Dead 2, but that's the point of the game, it's so intrinsically tied to the identity of what Red Dead 2 is about, like, these these outlaws, like, their way of life is getting disrupted and, like, towns are going up, and they're just trying to preserve the way that they live, and so, like, doing those mundane tasks is like hunting on your way back to camp is, like, that's the essence of what the game is about.
Mhm.
And so I think it justifies its open world in the sense of like an open world isn't the best way to tell that story. But I think a lot of open world games are just like they design this massive map and then they have to figure out what to put in it. And I think that ends up being a lot of areas of gameplay that are just not super meaningful because they're just trying to solve that problem they've created in making this massive open map.
Right. It's like the problem
Um,
when you'd go down the road and there'd be like someone who needs your help for a side quest. You'd help them and then you'd never speak of them again. No one in the world would ever
mhm.
talk about that person. There would never be any relation to that again.
Yeah, exactly, it's
Yeah.
inconsequential,
And
whereas
that's very opposite to this.
yeah, whereas I feel in Elden Ring, I feel like they did the inverse, where they were making a world, and the map size and how the map is configured is a direct result of designing everything in the map, like, they did it backwards, and I feel like it genuinely feels so much more organic and like a tangible, cohesive world in comparison to a lot of other open worlds.
Mhm.
And I love that feeling of, like, I'm so immersed running around in it, and it's like, "Well, if something's a little different in this area, like, why is it different?" Right? Like, "Why is the architecture slightly different here?" And, like, "Okay, now, like, the banners have changed, like, we're in a different, like, area's faction, and, like, the wildlife is slightly different." And so, like, I think it's so neat
Mhm.
to try to, like, put those puzzle pieces together as well, because if there's anyone I trust that matters,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
it's in this game.
Yeah. Very cool. I wanted to get your opinion too. We've been talking a lot about the open world and just quickly, what are
Mhm.
your thoughts as someone who has played the other ones on the horse and the
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of the that what that adds to the game and in terms of like, traversal combat, all that stuff.
So I think the horse is Torrent is a good boy, and this game is absolutely necessary to have Torrent because I couldn't imagine how long it would take you to run around on foot
I've been
everywhere.
talking to Mike and the first night he was playing, he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm just gonna mostly stick on foot, and I just like this more in these type of games." And I was like, "Power to you, dude, but I think you're gonna change
Yeah,
your mind."
that was 100% my initial thought as well, and I quickly backtracked on that because, oh my god, what I you just never finish, it's so fucking
Yeah,
big,
you'd be playing
and
for
so
way, way too
I
long.
ride Torrent a lot. I do, however, get off Torrent every single time I fight an enemy. I just don't think the horse combat feels great. Um, and I just like the regular combat so much that I get off him every time.
Mm.
I'm sure there's gonna be a boss fight that basically you're fucked unless you're riding
Yeah, right,
Torrent.
right, right.
So I'm sure I'll encounter that eventually and I'll have to adjust. But even the guys on horseback, like Tree Sentinel, I got off my horse and just fought him on my
That's
feet.
interesting. I found that I actually have been using the horseback combat quite a bit, and I've really enjoyed it specifically when I'm fighting big groups of weak enemies. Like I
Mhm.
found this one group of like they were like a big group of skeletons on a beach, and they're just
Oh,
like
yep,
there was a ton of them, right? Like that was
yep.
pretty cool.
Oh, I
And
think I was just there
yeah,
yesterday.
I
Yeah,
was there yesterday too.
yep.
And I like my favorite way to take those guys out is I kind of just ride in this big circle around
Yeah,
the
you
outskirts,
corral
and
them
I
and just
chip them all
blast.
away with my big axe or my hammer that I've got, and I'm just kind of, and then once I've, beaten down most of them, I kind of get off and finish them off on foot. But to me, it's like I- it changes the combat. Like, I don't know, like it's obviously not as fun to do it that way, but for me, when I'm so concerned of like I need to stay alive, I have so many souls, I really don't want to die here. It just I find my survivability is better on the horse. But
Yeah,
that maybe that's just my
absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely, and I think that is kind of like you're intended to use the horse,
Yeah.
especially like, with those, like, smaller enemies, but even, like, you get to, like, one of those hills with, like, 6 of the trolls, and,
Oh, I don't know
like,
if I've been there.
the troll you've probably been there. I mean, like, the trolls are those, like, the guys that pull the carts,
Oh,
those,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
big
yeah.
ones with
Okay,
beards,
sure.
so, like, the big enemies in this game, which is something that's cool and new, is they hurt each other. When they do a
Yeah.
swing, they'll actually damage each other, and so, like, people are always saying like, "Oh, that hill is so fun. You just get on your horse and, like, ride around them, and they beat each other up, and you're slashing them as you go by." And I'm like, I mean, that's awesome. That's super cool. That makes you feel creative to tackle it that way. I love that that's an option for people. I get off my horse and fight them
Yeah.
one at a
You're
time
just such a purist, Kate.
'cause
See, for
that's what
me, like
I
Bloodborne,
like.
I think one of these things about this game is which is interesting to me, and
Yeah.
there's a big dichotomy in like Souls design to me where I always get told like, okay, everything is intentional, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing in these games that are not intentional. Like, praise to be from Soft. They think of every little detail, and nothing is put in without reason. So by that logic, then they are perfectly fine with me being cheesy like that,
Absolutely.
because that's what's supposed to happen, right? And like if I want to bait a guy through a door which he can't walk through and then just hit him through the wall because the hitboxes are kind of fucked up,
Yep.
then that's not cheating either, because that is built into the
Absolutely.
game, right? And it's
Absolutely. There
interesting,
is
yeah.
no cheating in
It's
FromSoft, and
very interesting to me.
I impose rules on myself when I play these games, like, I
Hmm.
don't summon ever in a boss fight. I will run it 100 times if I have to, I'm not summoning. I will beat every single thing on my own accord. I don't use tons of magic aside from, like, just weapon buffs because I think magic can get a little bit, like, strange in certain encounters. Not a lot of enemies know what to do with getting
Hmm.
ranged attacked, and
Hmm.
there's just a lot of things that I do for myself just because to me that's more fun.
Sure,
But
yeah. And
it's
that's
in
what it
the
comes down
game.
to, right? Like that's how you want to play.
Yeah. It's in the game. Like, I don't really like, in Secure, I didn't use any of the weapon arts ever because I just wanted to
See, that
base
sounds like
combat.
less fun though. Like, don't you
And
want to
I no!
experience?
No. I don't know, to me, what's cool, what I like, and why I always play, like, the dex build, so my character
Yeah.
in Elden Ring is the same character I've ran every single game as best as I possibly can. And that means in Dark Souls, I have an Uchi katana in one hand, a
Yep.
parry dagger in the other hand, and I magic buff my sword once I get far enough to have stats in magic.
Yep.
And that's me every single game I ran through. All Dark Souls like that.
I love the
Elden Ring
continuity. That's
here,
super cool.
my Bloodborne character, the Rider Palash, which is about as close as you can get to a katana aside from when you get some later game DLC weapons. I mean, Sekiro just lucked out, it was
Yeah,
me, so that's
Sekiro
awesome.
was a good one for you then to line
Um,
up.
yes. So I do that, I just have this weird, I don't know, it's kind of
Yeah.
like a challenge myself now, like, I've gotta beat them all with the same character, and, like, this is me.
I like that. I respect that a lot.
But, I just like that play style. I really like the, kinda dodge through a hit, get one attack in, dodge through the next hit, get
Mhm.
another attack in, like, in and out kind of that sort of style. That's what I find the most fun. I like to do other stuff on, like, a second playthrough, but
Yeah,
that's
right.
what's fun to me. But with that being said, there are so many ways to tackle this game, so many ways you can build your character, approach encounters, summon your friends. It's not cheating. Play however you
Exactly.
wanna have. If you're having fun, you're playing the game correct.
Well, that's what I was gonna
And
say is, like, for me, it's
yeah.
like I'm summoning all my little spirits in whenever I get a
You meant
chance.
me.
I
Oh, you
I
can.
summoned Brandon last night,
Yeah. You're
another
playing
friend
on
of ours.
PlayStation, we can't
Yeah,
co-op.
we can't, but we actually took down a bunch of stuff together last night, and
Yeah.
he actually helped me beat Godric. We got through that
Mhm,
together, and I didn't even feel like, to your point, like I didn't even feel like that was cheating, because I know if he wasn't
mhm,
there to be summoned in, I would have just summoned the other NPC
mhm.
that may have actually been in some cases more useful than a human partner. So, I mean, I don't really feel like I super cheated there
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, it's not cheating, it's in the game, it is a legitimate mechanic. please use it and have fun with it. And if you're a weird masochist like myself, then don't use it and have fun like that, whatever works, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, there's so many tools. They're hard games, sure, but the game gives you a lot of tools and a lot of ways to decide how you want to approach things. And take advantage of that. And if it's too hard, come back later. Like there's
Yeah,
so much
yeah.
stuff to do.
One point that I really wanted to make sure I emphasize before we ran out of time. We got maybe about 10 or so minutes of Elden Ring talk left. But one thing I
Okay.
really wanted to put out there, and again, from the start of the conversation, what I said was that I really want to encourage people that have not traditionally liked a lot of Souls games to try this one out. And one of the reasons I really emphasize that is because I think now that I've played this, I'm kind of clarifying my thoughts on the difficulty of the games and like what that whole conversation comes to, because I agree with you. These games are tough, but they're not impossible. And I've played other games that are like we've talked about before. Like my difficulty usually comes more in like difficult platformers. Like that's
Mhm.
usually where I get like my cessation of like I need a challenge. And I think what this game does that has really made me like it a lot more than other Souls stuff is they have these things called the Stakes of America, which are
Yeah.
they are like
Oh,
little
yeah.
checkpoints in front of things like boss fights or difficult encounter rooms where in any other Souls game you would have had to do a run back from a bonfire or wherever, and like that's so tedious to me, um having to do that several times because I'm not good enough to usually do a lot of these tough fights on my first or second try. Like I'm running back for like 10, 12 times. The Stakes of America just puts you right back there so you can jump
Yep.
jump relatively right back into the encounter. And I think paralleling that with my enjoyment of like difficult platformers is a lot of those games, they have like no load time. You die and you're right back. Like I think of a game like Super Meat Boy where it's like that's a
Yeah,
hard
or
game.
like Cuphead.
Cuphead, but that's a hard
Yeah.
game, but you get right back into it immediately after you're finished. And it's hard, sure, but it takes away the tedium of having to practice. And I think that's something this game gets so right in terms of like being a little bit more inviting, because realistically it's like, why do you need to run down the same hallway and you can just dodge past the enemies, right? Like the enemies are all mindless blockheads in these games for the most part. They just like will let you go past them if you run quick enough. And so why not just start me right there? And I think that's such a great addition. Which is just like I am more inclined now to bash my head against that boss a few more times because I
Mhm.
don't have to worry about faffing around with the run back anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, that is a nice quality of life, and you even get the choice, like, do you wanna go to that checkpoint or you wanna go back
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
last, site of grace you were at? So, like,
Exactly.
you get options, and I think that's another thing that's nice to come. You see these little quality of life,
Yeah.
improvements from every game as you go. And Elden Ring is yeah, they've learned a lot, I think, from previous games, and they've made some considerations, and
Yeah.
I don't think they always will choose based off of, like, this is convenient for the player as opposed to, like, this is what we want for the
Sure.
world.
Sure.
But that's definitely something that is very inviting.
I think it's just
Uh
like a small little tweak, right? And it makes
Mhm,
sense in the lore of the game, like just like they always try and do, but it's just that little bit more helpful towards the player, which I really like.
mhm.
I have one more key point that I wanted to bring
Okay.
up personally, and then I'm going to let you run for the rest of the time because I know you probably have infinite. But I really just wanted to shout out one of the most amazing things about this entire game to me, and you can pick. There's so many things that are amazing about the game, but I am blown away by the enemy variety and the you're always fighting different dudes. And sure, there's some you see the skeletons sometimes, and then there's some bosses you actually like mini bosses that show up maybe more often than you would expect. But in general, in terms of being an open world game, and like one of our biggest criticisms of a game that won our best game of all time last year, God of War 2018, um one of our criticisms was like the enemies are like the same enemies you're fighting throughout the whole
Mhm.
game. And in this game, I mean, it's not like you don't get that, but I feel like for the most part, when you go to a new area, like the enemies are all different, they're all unique, they are all different in the way you fight them. Like I'm just blown away by the variety, and it's not just like palette swaps all the time. Um, and I think that is just fantastic because that's another problem that a lot of bigger games have, right? Is like, oh, it's
Well,
just the blue slimes kind of
yeah,
deal.
right? Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is like Dark Souls Breath of the Wild," and it's like, no, it's not. Breath of the Wild is a very different kind of open world, but it's like Breath of the Wild has 4
Hmm.
enemies.
Hmm.
That sucks.
Well, Breath of the Wild is not
Um,
so combat focused though, like
eh
I think there's it's
yeah.
going for something different
Yeah,
than this,
exactly.
right?
I've just
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
those comparisons, right? Because it's funny because when Breath of the
sure.
Wild came out, it was like,
Well,
"Oh,
it
it's like
is,
the Dark Souls of
but
Zelda,"
you
and
know what
now
is a good comparison though, because I think the Elden Ring is really the first game getting the Like this is the first game getting those similar reviews to what Breath of the Wild got.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But anyway, yeah, back
Anyways,
to
yeah.
enemy specifically. I agree. I think one of the coolest things about these games to me is that they enemies play by similar rules that you play by, and
Hmm.
obviously they're two-shotting you and they're outrageous sometimes, but when you come up against, especially all the humanoid enemies, they're doing whatever you're doing. You can feasibly get all of their armor sets, you can get all of their weapons, you
Hmm.
can buff with the exact same magic that they're using, and they're on the same playing field that you're on, and I think that is so cool how not only are they fun to fight because it makes it a lot more diverse, but it's also like, "Oh shit, that spell that guy was doing was kinda cool. I wanna look into that." And then, you become that guy if you want to. And so I really like how integrated that is for the player as well because it's not just it's not intangible.
Hmm.
It's not the, "Okay, that's just this knight enemy, like, he's cool." It's like, well, that stuff exists in the world, like, those swords are made, like, he's part of this army maybe, or, like, he studied this kind of faith, and therefore, like, you yourself could go do that as well. Like,
Hmm.
I'm fighting a little he's not a proper boss, he's just a really tough enemy, like, I backstabbed him, and it wasn't even, like, a quarter of his health, and it was like, "Uh-oh."
Like that's always such a bad feeling, right? When
Uh-oh.
you sneak up on someone and you're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take this guy down. And then you do your like most powerful thing and you're like, oh shit. Like
Yeah, you're like, "Oh shit, that barely scratched him," but he's like, he's got a shield, so that's a point against him for me, but he's got this,
oh,
like, lightning sword
I love
that
my
he's
shield,
buffed
Kate. You
him.
leave me alone
No, 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 it's fine, if you like it, you like
for
it.
now.
But anyway, he's got this lightning sword, and I'm like, "Shit, I wanna get a lightning sword," and he's doing cool lightning faith magic, and I'm like, "Shit, that's my late game," and so I just wanna be this guy. So I've been fighting him, like, jealous. But yeah, I guess closing things I'd want to say is this game is amazing. It's gonna be my next 6 months. I hope you guys are
Yeah.
interested in hearing about it. Um, go south first.
Go south first.
Stormvale Castle is easily my favorite part of the game so far. But oh my god, are you not meant to go there at level 10? Margaret will check you at the door.
Yeah,
Margaret will
she
check
checked
you
me out
so
at the door,
hard
I'll tell you
at the
very
door.
quickly.
When you do go to Stormvale, get used to some parkour. This is very
Yeah.
cool to do parkour in Elden Ring because, oh my god, we have a jump now, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
Um, if you notice you're losing souls in Stormvale, very interesting. Keep an eye on your souls and where you think those might be going to. As a little hint I'll give for listeners.
Hmm.
Something cool I found out recently that maybe I'll have to tell you about
You might have to tell me
off
about this,
camera.
yeah.
What else? Patches is a 10 out of 10 in this game. Have you met Patches?
I know this whole thing about Patches and how the Souls guys love him.
Okay.
Um,
You haven't met
I
him yet.
you know, I'm inclined to not know much about I know he's a
Okay.
recurring, like, character that comes across in, like, all these games, though.
You'll know him when you know him, and all I gotta say is he's a trustworthy dude. Just give him the benefit of
Okay.
the doubt. That is amazing. I've died in the funniest ways in this game.
Oh my god,
Uh
I've died so many times, like, going off the horse jump for the first time. PSA to anyone who has not played the
Yeah,
game before, when
so
you go
great.
over those jump pads on the horse, they are not controlled for you, because the first time
No.
I went off one, I just flew right up into the air. By the time I realized I had to steer, I was, like, over the water and I had drowned. So you definitely need to steer when you go over the jump pads.
Yes, I'm so glad you were not the first you were the second person that had told me that they flew off and
Oh my
drowned.
god. It was so
So
funny
I
though.
was
Like I wish
prepared.
I had taken a video of it now that I think about it, because it's just yeah, it's really strange. I find that whole horse jumping thing, like, it's a little jarring. It's almost like the one thing in this game that and I'm sure there's a lore decision around it too, but it feels a little out of place doing the jumping, I will say. Like it's almost a level of mobility that you like shouldn't have in a game like this.
Yeah,
It
it's kinda
feels kind
maybe
of
for convenience.
yeah, juxtaposed. It's like, hey, there's a lot of verticality to these levels, and we've designed it really well, but there's a few times where we just need you to be able to get up here really quick. And
Yeah.
so like
Kind
here
of
you
a
go.
it's kind of that, like, just exception of,
Yeah.
like, okay, you could backtrack and go around, and it'll take you 10 minutes to get there, or
Yeah.
just jump up, it's
Similar
fine.
to like the Stake America, right? It's just that little time
Yeah.
saver for the player,
Yeah, exactly.
which is great.
Awesome. One other thing we haven't really touched on, and I guess that's more spoilery, is the story of this game.
Right. That's because I
So
have no idea what the hell is going on.
yeah, I'm still a lost. I've gotten my first great rune, so I've met
So have I.
some fingers, you
So
could
have
say.
I.
Which is really fascinating to me. The big theme so far that is not a spoiler, but just to look out for is definitely limbs and grafting.
Oh god,
And our
yeah.
good friend Roderick with his six-fingered hands, and many of them, is incredibly interesting to me. I've had a friend I've been chatting. I've been chatting a lot of limb lore with everybody, but as one friend in particular, we've been chatting a lot of limb lore, and we've paralleled it to like the trees because obviously the Erd tree is like the big thing that's granting grace and life, and um, is very important spiritually and physically to the world. And there's little offshoots everywhere of like smaller, like little Erd
Mhm,
trees and just
mhm.
little branches and things. We're like, oh,
Always nice when you find one of those, by the way,
that's
folks.
like, yeah, but we're like, oh, that's like the limbs of the Erd tree. And so now all these characters are doing limb related things. And so that's kind of like a weird motif that's going through. There's also a lot of like astronomy and like
Mhm.
celestial star stuff. So I can't wait till it just goes like full what the fuck cosmos
It's
in the
gonna
second
happen, right?
half.
You know, another theme
Um,
too, there's a lot of
mhm.
turtles in this game.
Dogs, you mean?
Dogs, yeah, sorry, my
Yeah,
mistake. I'm still getting into the terminology and the
yeah,
lingo.
those are
Dogs,
dogs.
sorry, dogs. I left one of my favorite things about this game, and on the lighter side, is I've really gotten into
Mhm.
leaving messages on the ground.
Little notes.
I
Yep.
love to see like what's gonna get praised and what's not. And you know, at the start of when I first started playing, I put out a tweet and I was like, "Why are people only putting these like troll ass things?" And like, I still have no respect for the guys that are like secret passage here, and then like there's like nothing behind the wall. Like, if
Yep.
you're doing that,
Yeah.
fuck you hard. But
No, no, it's okay. Keep
I've
doing it. Keep doing
completely
it.
flipped my opinion on the guys that are like funny
Todd?
dog here, like
Yeah.
finger butthole. Like those are just funny
Finger
to me.
butthole. Yeah.
And like
Fortnite.
yeah, there's just this one, and like from it's so funny. It's like you know the part like I'm sure people have seen online now, like where the bear jumps out of nowhere and just like
Mhm.
comes up and like destroys you. I ended up having that happen, and I killed him, and then I just wrote like didn't expect dog. It was like the
Yeah,
funniest thing in
didn't
the world.
expect that.
Like it's just so funny. I
They're
love it.
so funny. I love the community.
I love
That's
it.
another cool part. Maybe it's a nice thing to close off of is
Yeah.
just this is the first one I've played on release.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm a big FromSoft fan, but I've never
Did you
played
not play
one.
Sekiro on release?
I was behind on Secure. I started it pretty early, but then had, my
Mm.
PC broke, so
Okay. Yeah.
I had
Right.
to
Right. Right.
wait and then finish it later, so this is the first one I've properly played, like, I was there, like, Thursday, like, through the magic of time travel and time zones, we got it at 3
Yes.
PM on the 24th. Thank God, Vancouver, best
That's
time
right.
zone.
Well, worst time
Um
zone, really. That's why we're behind. We got to switch it.
Yeah, but we're the best because we don't have to wait till midnight. We get it at 3 PM. It's
Well,
awesome.
okay, sure.
So
I guess so. Yeah.
I I went into work like 2 hours early so that I could leave to be home for 3 PM. I was at my desk. I was sitting there doing the like, "Let me in" kinda thing.
Yeah. Right.
And I know so many people are playing, and it's, like, everywhere on the internet, and I haven't had any well, I've had one tiny thing spoiled, by someone making a comment they shouldn't have made, but everything else has been so good, no spoilers, community's just so excited, like, there's notes and phantoms everywhere, and it
Hmm.
just genuinely feels like an event I'm taking part in, like,
It does.
buddy
Yeah.
and I are, like it's the point where, like, a buddy and I are, like, having PvP duels that are influencing our real life D&D campaign based off
What
of
the fuck?
how we're doing in our, like, Elden Ring duels, because it's just so, like, relevant and topical and, like, everybody's thinking about it,
Amazing.
and
That's
so
amazing.
it
Wow.
it is just incredible, and I see, like I wanna see the dog note forever, like, that will make me so happy.
Right.
But the best note ever left, is I think it's in Bloodborne that has this one because each one, like, when you leave the messages, right, you can't just write whatever you want. You
Yeah.
have
It's
to
like
write,
preset.
like,
Um.
within
Yeah.
yeah, the parameters of, like, whatever words they let you use, which is why, like, they come with such funny phrases. And, like, in that restriction, it makes it way funnier than if you could just write whatever you want. But the best one, and I think it's Bloodborne, and people would put it anytime there was, like, a little like, somewhere too small that you couldn't fit in, like a little, like, crevice or, like, the architecture, like, making, like, somewhere that you weren't big enough to walk past. There'd just be a note every single time, and it always made me so happy. Just, "You must accept fatty." Like, "Sorry, you're too fat, you can't go." And, like, I just love it. It's so memes because I think the 3 tiers of FromSoft, and you have to play a decent amount of FromSoft to really get to this level.
Yeah, see, this is
The 3
the stuff that
tiers
goes over my head, right?
the 3 tiers of FromSoft and their design is combat, lore, and just funny troll shit. And you get Miyazaki so much in Elden Ring. Like, you take your butt over to those dragon burned ruins in the lake early
I
on,
did
and
that
you
so early on, man.
and you just get absolutely Miyazaki'd, and it happens so much in this game. And there's so many times where, like, you're exploring and all of a sudden you're fighting a massive lion with knives taped to his legs. And like
Oh, I can't wait for that.
a fucking course you're fighting a lion with knives taped to his leg. Yeah, like, yeah, absolutely, obviously. Like, why wouldn't you be? And it's just the funniest stuff, and like, as intentional and like cool and like lore reasons a lot of things are, just as many things are just like wacky and ridiculous and stupid.
Mhm.
And once you get past the point of like, I'm scared and trying not to die, and you just like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna fight 3 fucking big crabs right now that are gonna try like that are gonna try to like pick me up and pinch me. Like,
Oh
you
my
just
god, yeah.
have to start laughing. And once you've transcended that point of I'm no longer scared and I'm just like cracking up the whole time, you've hit peak FromSoft,
Right, right,
and
right.
I love it.
Well, you know what? I feel like I legitimately am getting there. Like, I'm getting to the point now when
Mhm.
I hit some tougher encounters, like there's a non-zero chance that I will beat it on my first try now, which is something I
Mhm.
couldn't have said before. So I'm kind of getting there. Happy to have done it, and I'm sure we're gonna have a lot more opportunity to talk about this game on the show because I know
Mhm.
I'm not stopping playing for now. I know you will probably never stop playing, and it's gonna come up again. So that's great. Um, give me now. I'm gonna give you a challenge.
Okay.
Summarize your thoughts on Elden Ring in 4 words.
Oh, in 4 words. Um,
Mine is
uh,
try finger butthole.
driving your butthole. I hate that's the first thing I thought. I was like, "No, I'm not a degenerate. I won't say that." Um, that
Okay,
is a
I'll
tough
do mine.
one.
I thought of another one. Mine is big
Okay.
hammer, much fun.
Big hammer, much fun. I will say dodge, parry, seek, rune.
Okay. Well, again, I'll give you
I'll
another try next
workshop
time.
it.
How about
The
that?
Twitter we'll maybe tweet out some
Yeah,
better little Elden Ring forewords or
sure, sure.
haikus or
Well, if you want to
stuff
give
like
us a
that.
4 word review for Elden Ring, you can write into us at circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Or you can get in touch with us at C&S Pod, where you can find all of our links, just like our listener mail writer today did, because we, of course, have to close out the show by answering a listener mail question, as we always do, which Kate will read for us now.
Yes, absolutely. So this one this one comes from the same kind of quality we had on the last show. Just a little like it's fun in the same way FromSoft will troll a little bit, I think. But it says, "Happy midnight 360s and 490s. What is your opinion on trophies? I feel as though there is a bigger emphasis on people chasing them on platforms like PlayStation or Xbox and less so on PC." And that comes from Mario Party blows. Mario Party does not blow, in
Yeah,
fact,
geez.
but we do appreciate the question.
Can't agree with that name, but I mean, yeah. Trophies. This is a big discussion, hey. I
Mhm.
like the point in there from the message of like it doesn't seem to matter as much on PC, and I think that is so pertinent to the way that I feel about it. Like, I'm not a huge trophy hunter in general, but I definitely don't care about Steam achievements or like epic achievements, you know? And like, I don't know if you feel any differently because I know you're a lot more like PC focused than I am. Like, do those things matter to you at all, or
Now, to me, I school me if I'm wrong, but to me, I don't see what the difference is between Steam trophies and, like, PlayStation trophies. To me, I,
there isn't
like, say
one?
think they're equivalent,
That's the
right?
thing. They
So
are equivalent, but I agree with
yeah.
the writer here that
Hmm.
for some reason, and I feel like it may just be like PlayStation is like my primary place I play my games, right?
Mhm.
And so I will say that like I care a lot more about getting a trophy than I care about getting a Steam achievement or an Epic achievement or whatever. Even an Xbox achievement, like I have my Xbox over there too, and I care about that more as well. But it's on a very small scale. Like I really don't get drawn towards going for trophies a lot of the time, regardless of whatever platform.
Yeah, I have a very love-hate relationship with trophy hunting because I am a completionist in the sense of I want to experience 100% of the game's content if it's a game I like.
Hmm.
So that means I want to do every boss fight. I want to like find all the weapons. I want to like explore all the areas. I don't want to miss anything that I feel is like gameplay. And so in that sense, I am a big completionist. And like if I
Right.
find out like, oh, if there's like a different, story choice you make that makes you fight one different boss, I'm going to do that because I don't want to miss out on
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
boss. And I am like I go through games so incredibly slowly because I have to look at every single nook and cranny to see like what's there. And like I don't run by enemies, I have to fight them all because like I don't want to miss them. And so I have that kind of like neurotic completionist mindset, but I don't trophy hunt. And I find what puts me off of trophy hunting is oftentimes they're things that are like in addition to playing the game, or
Hmm.
they're like various challenges sometimes, or sometimes they're just like arbitrary things that you have to do, and I don't necessarily like doing them. Like,
Yeah.
if the ending of a game if the game has 3 endings and they are actually different in terms of gameplay, I'll wanna do them. But if it's just like, you make a choice at the end that gives you good, bad, or, like, neutral ending, I'll just watch that on YouTube because, like, that's a cutscene.
Hmm.
I don't need to
Hmm.
go back and get the trophy for doing all 3 of those things, or, like, sometimes games of, like, upgrade, all these weapons to, like, a certain amount or something, and it's like, "Well, I'm not gonna use that weapon, I don't
Yeah.
need to."
I think
So
I think a lot of it comes down to like how did that game company make their
y
trophy list, right? Because at their best, their trophy like to me the best example I have of of a good example of being a trophy hunter is my experience with Ghost of Tsushima. I finished that
Mhm,
game. I got through the story, I enjoyed it. Like it's one of my favorite games on of last generation. Fantastic game. And to me, it's like I finished the story. I'm not always super compelled to go and, we were talking about open worlds earlier and like check off all
mhm.
the little check boxes around the world, but I wanted to play more of the game. So I looked at the trophy list and the trophies really align with like doing all the stuff in the world. So it was almost like that extra bit of incentive of like, I beat the game, I rolled the credits. That's usually where I stop. Like I roll the credits, I move along. I like to try a lot of different games, but
Mhm.
trophy lists, I think when they're done right, like that one, they can give you a reason to extend your playtime with something by looking for more challenge, right?
Yeah.
By giving you more to do. And at their worst, I feel like they become like, in God of War, right? God of War, you're like, why would I ever want to go shoot down all those birds in the sky? There's like 50 of these crows
Yes.
in the sky. Like that is not
Yeah.
fun. That's just like tedium of going around because it's gonna give me a bronze trophy that's gonna pop when I eventually
Yeah.
do this. And like I'd like to spend more time in that world, but not doing that. Not just like picking up
Yeah.
some random, pickup because
Yeah.
that's what's required of me based on what trophy says.
Yeah, exactly. Trophies to me are like I equate them to like why I hate grinding in games in
Hmm.
like a
Hmm.
weird way. It's like if I'm doing everything and I'm being intentional about it and trying not to miss stuff, then I feel like I have completed 100% of the game.
Right.
But like trophy lists are, and sometimes they're good. Like obviously it depends on how you use them. They're not inherently good or bad. But a lot of games are like they just give you like tedious extra checklists to do, and I hate that because like well yeah, like in God of War, like I've been everywhere. I did all the side quests. I did all the areas. Like, oh no, I missed 2 ravens because I just didn't notice them. And I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
you could argue like, well, that is doing everything. That's gameplay. But like, it's just noticing a couple things in an area and like going back to do it afterwards is so difficult. Cause like, well, I don't know which one I missed.
Hmm.
Guess I better like go check a Wikipedia list and like like a guide for it and go and check all these areas just in case to see which one I missed. And at that point, it becomes like tedious work.
It does, yeah, it
And but
does.
at the same time, getting that 100% does feel
Well, that's the
nice.
thing, right? And I feel like we're talking about maybe two slightly different things. Is like
Yeah.
completionism isn't always getting a platinum trophy or like 100% of the
Mhm.
achievements, right? Like
Yeah.
I would argue that you could 100% God of War by doing all the side quests and stuff, and I would say
Yeah.
you've 100%ed it even if you didn't kill all the ravens. But
Mhm.
I mean, I think that kind of comes down to like everyone has their own individual sort of
Yeah,
set of parameters of what they
it's just
consider.
that trophies are a
Hmm.
very tangible
They are,
thing
right?
to attribute that
And
to,
when they're
right?
done
Like
right, I think that a good trophy list does reflect what you're saying of like
mhm.
you've seen everything in the game, you've done everything. Therefore, oh, you happen to have got all the trophies because you did that. And those are
Yeah.
good trophy lists.
And you know what? I do think they're fun. I like looking at them, especially when it's stuff that just you kinda do as you play,
Hmm.
and it's fun to see the percentages, like, it pops up on Steam, and it's like, I got one the other day from beating a boss or, like, destroy or, like, building the Great Rune in Elden Ring, for example. Like, I did that yesterday, and it's, like, one of the first kinda big story things you're supposed to do or, like, the
Hmm.
direction you're given in the game. It's like, I restored the power of a Great Rune. 29.6% of players on Steam have done that. And it's like it's kinda neat to see, like, how many or, like,
Yeah.
how, like, on curve you are with people or what people are doing, and it's like, oh, 35% of people have, like or 38% of people have beaten the boss that let you do that. So it's like, "Oh, you guys just didn't go restore the rune after? Come on."
Yeah. You know what's
But
interesting
it
though? Like what you're saying there is exactly one of my favorite things about trophies is
Mhm.
when you can see like, oh, certain percentage of people have done this, or you can compare your list
Mhm.
with your peers and like, oh,
Yeah.
you didn't manage to do that while I played, but you can see that I did, and it's like shorthand
Yeah.
for like seeing where someone's at in a game sometimes.
And yeah, it's partially nice for that too, and then it's also partially just kinda cool for, like, when it's like a fun little reward for when you do something cool in a game. Like, I like creative trophies that are, like, based around playstyle as well. Like,
Hmm.
I played Fury recently and really enjoyed that game. But there's a trophy you get, and it's, like, for doing, like, 10 consecutive parries in a row or something, like, without messing one
Hmm.
up. And or, like, beating a boss without getting hit and stuff like that, and it's like, you feel cool when you do that just in general, but when the trophy pops up, it just emphasizes like, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
I just did that, like, that was really badass what just happened with me." And so I like them when they do those sorts of things that just kind of like organic as you're playing, you that might happen to you.
I think so too. And like I want to clarify, like when I say I'm not a trophy hunter, of course it feels good when they pop up and you get them. Like
Mhm.
I want to get as many as I can. Like it feels good. Like you want to get the accomplishments. When I say I'm not a trophy hunter, I mean like once I've completed a game, once I've rolled the
Yeah,
credits and
you
made it
don't
to
go
the end,
back for
it's
it.
very rare that I will continue to play it to go for the trophies. Unless it's
Mhm.
like a specific circumstance where I want more like Tsushima or whatever. Um, one of the worst things I think trophies can do is the like the difficulty lock trophies where it's like beat the game on medium, beat the game on hard, beat the game
Ugh,
on very hard. And it's not that the problem is wanting to reward people for going through on the hard difficulty. I think the problem is a lot of the time it
they
requires
don't
multiple playthroughs.
yeah.
And it's like sometimes the hardest difficulty is actually locked for when you beat the game. So then in order to get the platinum, you inherently have to replay the entire game again on hard, and it's like that's a big ask, man. I don't replay a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
And like what are the chances you're actually going to do that?
Exactly, and that's where I feel like it gets into tedium where it's like,
Mhm.
I wanna do the trophies as I'm playing the game, I don't wanna have to, like, make a list of, like, what I have to do once I'm done,
Yeah.
and I will say for anything like that, you can have a trophy for each difficulty, but if you do it on the hardest, you better as
Yeah,
hell reward all the ones under
exactly.
that,
If you don't do
because
that, that's the biggest sin you can make.
absolutely, that is a cardinal sin because, like, what are you gonna say? You beat the game on extra hard, but, like, "Oh, you don't have
Yeah.
medium
Oh my god, could you
difficulty. Oh,
imagine? That would
can
be
you
such
do
bullshit though. Could you
it?"
imagine you literally have to go and beat it like 5 times on like everything, like story difficulty all the way up? Like that would be just
Some games do, and it's just oof, that's the
just
killer.
insane.
That's the worst.
Yeah, I think the moral of our conversation here is like trophies are cool. They can be cool. They're not the ultimate thing,
Yeah,
but if you do them right and you give them for the right things, I think they can really help.
mhm,
I mean, I remember just one last story is like playing something like Uncharted 2 or Uncharted 3 back in those days and like trying to get as many trophies as I could while I was playing. And just kind of like there was a lot of trophies in that game for like get 40 kills with this gun, get 40 kills with this gun, get 40
mhm,
kills with this gun. So I remember like purposely holding on to guns that I really hated or like things that I
mhm,
avoiding guns that I think were my favorite ones and would have made the game like me better at the game like to use them, but purposely
mhm.
using the things that I like needed to use to get these trophies. And it was weird to me now thinking about that of like how much I changed the way I played just to get the trophies, whereas I wouldn't do that now. Like now I kind of would just play the
Yeah.
way that I want and see what I get.
Yeah, it is really interesting and, like, there's not a right or wrong, I think it just comes down
Hmm.
to the person, like, some people, they get a lot of satisfaction from getting trophies, and
Totally.
so they'll play the game in a way that they wouldn't normally play or will be maybe, like, less fun in the moment, but it feels rewarding and satisfying, and therefore it's worth it. Whereas other people are like, "I don't get enough satisfaction from having the trophy, so I'd rather just have more fun in the like, at
Yeah,
the
right.
time I'm playing. And so, like, it's kinda like a weird balance, and I feel like it's definitely something that can make people fatigue on a game, is if they focus too much on the trophies and, like, burn themselves out doing
Yeah,
that. But at the same time, it's also, like, a really great motivator for some people to play games. I think it's just another one of those, like,
exactly.
inherently, like, do play how you wanna play, like, you really need to figure out what sort of thing clicks for you. And as long as the trophy list isn't one of those ones, like, every now and again you get a game, I think, like, some shooters are bad for it, and they'll get, like, 30 million kills with these guns, and it's like
Yeah, oh
like,
my god.
realistically, the time it would take for you to have to, like, do that is, like, astronomical and, like, almost impossible. But, like, if they're reasonable trophies, I think it's,
Yeah, my favorite one of
use
that,
at your own, use
what
at will.
of what you're talking about, there's one on in every single Gears of War game has a achievement for
Right.
this, and it's like spill X amount of liters of blood. Because
Right.
it's like some astronomical number though. Like you would have to run through the campaign, I don't know, like multiple times and play multiplayer to even
Yeah.
come close to doing that. It's
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like they've kind of dialed that back. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
trophies at one point used to be, like, really difficult things to do, and it was supposed to be, like, only 2% of players will ever get this because, like, we made it really hard just to see if anyone could. But now
Hmm.
that completionism's a thing, like, they've kind of made it like, "Alright, some of these are still quite difficult, but, like, we're sort of intending you to be able to beat them
Right.
if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
put the time in."
It's interesting.
Um,
They're just additive content, right? That's what it is. It just
yeah.
gives you another reason to keep playing. But yeah, like I said at the top of this segment, if you would like to write in with your Elden Ring in 4 words review, or your thoughts on trophies and achievements, you can send those emails to circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you because any kind of story you want to tell us, question, comment, whatever you have to say to us, let us know. We'll read it on the show and we'll have a great time doing it. So please do that. And thank you to everyone that has engaged with us already. Like we said at the top, you can find us at circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. You can find us at C&S Pod on Twitter. All the links are down below in there as well. And yeah, thank you for all the support. We'll be back to talk a lot more Elden Ring in the future. I'm so sure about that. But yeah, we'll see you on the next podcast. And we're going to go back and hit up limb lore some more. So more, uncover some more limb lore. So we'll do this. You know what? We usually do the peace sign at the end too. This has like a lot more meaning now.
Yeah, you gotta wiggle
As
them
a
as
thing.
well.
Yeah. Jeez. Maybe not
Gotta
quite as
wiggle them just
hairy
right.
as the ones,
No. Oh, no, those are actually really gross sounds.
All right, we're verging on spoiler territory here. We're getting out of here. See you later, everyone. Thanks for listening.